Rendezvous with Death, Oakland University in Detroit. At the beginning of the 1995 winter semester, 23-year-old student Tina Bigger is reported missing. At the time, she was working on a research project investigating the health risks of high-class prostitutes. She soon discovers that there are far more dangers involved in the business of love. Violence is added to the health risks. 23-year-old Tina Bigger is majoring in psychology at Oakland University in Detroit. It was to be her last year at university. She grew up in a military family. She is known among her friends as a lively and ambitious person. Tina Bigger was the typical American girl. Her father works as a commander in the Coast Guard. Her mother is a registered nurse. In addition to her studies, Tina works as a waitress at a Rochester restaurant and lives with her boyfriend Todd in an apartment complex near the university. Todd is studying at the University of Michigan. The couple have an unstable relationship, so much so that even friends wonder whether the friendship can ever really work. But Tina also had another side. She could be suspicious and vindictive and sometimes get very angry. Not many people knew this side of her. Tina was working on a research project called A Review of the History of Sexuality and Healthcare of Women Working in Escort Services. The aim was to find out whether high-class call girls and street prostitutes have the same knowledge about the risk of sexually transmitted diseases. She decided to conduct her own study in the hope of getting a better exam. And she began to take an interest in prostitutes and how they dealt with AIDS, linking the two together. It's August 23, 1995. Todd goes to university. He says Tina was still asleep when he leaves the house. When he returns in the evening, she is not there. Todd immediately reports this to the police. Normally, disappearances are solved within a few days or even hours. A few phone calls are usually enough to find out where the person is or has just been. But this case is different right from the start. Tina's car has disappeared. However, none of her personal belongings are missing from the apartment. None of Tina's friends have seen her or heard anything from her. The police eventually find out that Tina is looking for her own apartment without Todd. She tells her family that she wants to meet other men after she moves out. The fact that Tina was planning to move to another apartment and was already looking for another apartment made me suspect that something was wrong. I decided to talk to Todd a little more about their life together. Maybe I had missed something. Even though Todd doesn't seem particularly harmless, he seemed to be very affected by this. And I think it's normal for investigators to suspect him first. And the police come across more inconsistencies. Tina found an ambiguous greeting card addressed in reply months earlier. The sender was a woman. Tina suspects infidelity. Well, the relationship was sometimes good, sometimes bad. People had even seen them arguing. He was very devoted, but sometimes they were both easily aroused. He spent more time with her than anyone else. He probably knew her best. Of course, he was suspected. Despite their differences, Todd denies having anything to do with Tina's disappearance. Todd suspects she is at the steakhouse. When he calls there to find out if his girlfriend has been working, he receives a surprising answer. Tina had already quit her job several months ago. She didn't say anything about the dismissal. She even continues to wash her waitress's clothes as if everything is as usual. Todd searches the whole apartment for a clue that could point to Tina's whereabouts. He finds a sports bag that he has never seen before. In the bag are condoms, knee-high pantyhose, lingerie, lube, credit card receipts, and envelopes labeled Crystal in the upper left corner and addressed to La Escort Service. A call to the owners of the escort service gets Todd nowhere. A girl called Tina Bigger is unknown to them. In conversation, however, he learns that this Crystal is one of the agency's most sought-after hostesses. Escort services are available in most major cities. They offer men a female companion for a fee of $200 to $400 per hour. These services usually include sexual intercourse. The escort service works like this. A customer calls and makes a request. be it a blonde, a brunette, a tall or short girl. The agency then calls the girls it is working with. The hostesses are then told with whom and where they have an appointment. The girls are then paid by the clients themselves. From now on, Todd suspects that Tina is leading a second life as a high-class call girl. She had decided to research the lives of high-class prostitutes and their knowledge of AIDS. So she began contacting such services so that she could talk to the girls. I think it was in the course of her research that she became interested in this kind of work. I think it was also because of the pay, because she was broke and had maxed out her credit cards. She also wanted a new car and needed to finance her studies. The money you make is way more than working at a steakhouse. In the end, she got $300 per date. Maybe that's how women have their own fantasies about themselves, and maybe she lived them out. I think she had her own fantasies and wanted more attention in a distant way, and as a prostitute, she got that attention. After vehemently denying the escort service, Todd's suspicions are confirmed. Tina Bigger works as a hostess for an escort agency under the name Crystal. And there are even more surprises. Tina works for 2 other services and therefore has contact with several dozen people. Unknown clients who are now all suspected of having something to do with the student's disappearance. It was probably very important for Tina to hide what else was going on in her life from her boyfriend. After all, she lived with him. He knew almost everything about her. But if he had found out that she was working for an escort agency, it would have wreaked havoc on his life and theirs together. He was naturally depressed and even contemplated suicide, wanting to shoot himself with his gun. Then he called some friends, but they talked him out of it. In the end, he decided that he owed it to Tina to do whatever it took to get to the bottom of it. Phone calls recorded by the agency reveal numerous requests for Tina from a man named Ken Trent. They meet for the first time at the Bluebird Motel, exactly 10 days before Tina's disappearance. Among Tina's personal belongings in her apartment, the police find a love letter with the following content. Tina, dear Tina, my heart belongs only to you. Your love makes me float. You are determined to come to me. I know the wait is worth it. When the police search Ken Trent's apartment, they notice the name Crystal on a picture taped to the refrigerator. A local car dealer testifies that Tina and Ken were looking at new cars at his place. In a conversation, he overheard that Ken wanted to lend Tina money for a car. Ken Trent is a 42-year-old ex-convict. His file is full of convictions for forgery, fraud, embezzlement, and theft. He is by no means the successful businessman he most likely made Tina believe he was. He is a kind of drifter, a loner. He's a petty thief and a small-time con man. He had a few small jobs, but not for long. In my opinion, he was a kind of little weasel. I don't know how else to describe him. He had a quiet voice and was pathetic. He probably thought Tina was going to be his girlfriend or something. Ken Trent admits to having met Tina Bigger, whom he knew through the escort agency as Crystal. He states that they later met privately, without the agency's mediation. Ken further claims that Tina stopped taking money for her love services, and that they were a couple. Ken told police that he had taken Tina to the airport a week earlier. She had flown to a client in Ohio. But when the statement is checked, it turns out that Tina's name is not on any passenger list. Ken goes on to say that Tina entrusted him with the car while she was away. The man readily agrees to a search of the car by the police. In the car, the police find more names and addresses of customers, as well as directions to them. From the notes from your car, and from the agency, we learned that she had contact with people who lived out of state, even out of the country. So it was also quite possible that she had traveled somewhere. Why didn't Tina Bigger leave a message, and why didn't the escort service know anything? The police are faced with a big mystery. A call girl has disappeared. The last person to have seen her is a client named Ken Trent, and in the trunk of the missing girl's car, the investigators find a lot of junk, but no evidence of a crime. Science has proven that first-time killers hide their victims in areas that are familiar to them, and so the police search the area around Ken Trent's apartment with sniffer dogs. Richard P. 2 of the Michigan State Police works with his sheepdog Kay. Kay is trained to sniff out human bodies. To train the dog, the police officer hides small human tissues or fluid samples in the training area. However, the dog is not rewarded when he finds animal remains, but only when he discovers human remains. So he searches longer and more extensively because he wants the reward. P2 and Kay search the wooded area around Ken Trent's apartment building and also in the area of a monastery where the suspect often goes for walks. And although they comb through several hectares of woodland, the search is unsuccessful. The police have no evidence to arrest Ken Trent. After being questioned again, he is free to go. Dr. Mark Benecke is a bloodstain expert and knows how to conduct an investigation. Accuracy plays a key role on the road to success. One basic rule is to search within a radius of several meters to see if you can find even the smallest traces. Another rule is to look beyond the edge of your plate. There are often individual traces on the ceiling or in corners of the room where you would not normally expect to find them. So the rule of thumb here is, search as long and as much as you can, take as much time as possible. Since they have no other clue than the car, the officers decide to search the trunk again. The officers are embarrassed to discover that the supposed coffee stains on the cup are dried drops of blood. And when they pull off the carpet in the trunk, they discover a pool of blood in the right-hand corner. DNA tests show the blood is Tina Bigger's. The investigation had already been carried out as in a murder case, but when the blood was found, there was no longer any doubt. The amount of blood in the trunk points to murder, and since the car has been in Ken Trent's possession since Tina's disappearance, the man once again becomes the prime suspect. But now Ken has suddenly disappeared too. And then, 1 month after Tina Bigger's disappearance, the police make their first breakthrough. Ken's brother suggests that the police search his deceased aunt's rundown house. The house is only 10 miles away from Tina's home. Among the trees behind the house, the police find the badly decomposed body of a young woman. There was no flesh or organs left, just bones. So the coroner really didn't have much material to make a determination. A comparison of the teeth provides the final proof. It is Tina Bigger. But does the girl's body still allow conclusions to be drawn about the cause of death? Dr. Christian Schumer is a forensic pathologist at the University Hospital in Hamburg. His job is to determine the cause of death on the basis of evidence on the body. In particularly favorable cases, traces on the corpse, such as hematomas and injuries, can be used to draw conclusions about the violence that caused the death and also about the position of the perpetrator. As the decomposition of Tina Bigger's body began in the neck area, the forensic pathologist also suspects that Tina was strangled. It was an unnatural cause of death. There were no fractures in the head area, so it must have happened in the neck area. That's what we call neck trauma. I could not determine that the neck was slit, that she was strangled or suffocated, but it must have been a neck injury. A nationwide search for Ken Trent begins. He is finally discovered in a rundown neighborhood in the center of Detroit. When the police break in, Ken tries to slit his wrists in the bathroom. Then he gives up. After several hours of interrogation, Ken finally admits that he and Tina had an argument about money. Tina had fallen and fatally hit her head. But the x-rays of Tina's skull disprove this scenario. She did not have a fractured skull. If she had had internal bleeding from the skull, there would have been bloodstains. But that is not the case. Even if one assumes from the pool of blood in the car that she had a head wound, it is clear that the wound was not fatal. When Ken Trent is confronted with this information, he makes a shocking statement. He said, "Have you ever loved a person so much that you wanted to save them from their problems?" The police pressed him to be more specific. What did he mean? Well, you see, Tina had been so miserable for the last few days. That's when I decided to end it for her and help her out of her misery. When the police heard this, everyone thought, "My God, we're dealing with a murderer." "Your Honor, Is it possible, and would it benefit the court to just end the trial? I do not wish to exercise my rights any further. I plead guilty, Your Honor. With this statement, Ken accepts an offer from the prosecution and pleads guilty to second-degree murder. Tina's family agrees to this deal. The aim was to prevent the public from finding out about the double life. The prosecution believes there is a violent fight when Tina finds out that Ken has lied to her and that he has no money for a new car. In the fight, Tina hits her head and injures herself. She is then strangled to death or suffocated. Ken then puts Tina's body in the trunk of her car and hides the body near his aunt's house. This is the gruesome end to an adventurous relationship. Tina had reached a crossroads in her life. She was confused and had money problems. No one can say why she actually crossed the line, but there is no doubt that she had a clearly structured life with clear priorities. She was a first-class leader, a good student, just a great person, a joker, and a good friend to everyone. Now, how she got from A to B, to this escort service, is a mystery to many. Ken Trent is sentenced to life imprisonment. Tina Bigger led a double life and fell into the arms of a swindler. When Tina fell into this double life, she had ideas that were more reminiscent of the movie Pretty Woman. Richard Gere was supposed to come and rescue her, give her wonderful gifts, and improve her lifestyle. But that's not the real life of a call girl. You can meet very desperate and strange characters. In her case, unfortunately, it wasn't Richard Gere she met, but Ken Trent. And the fact that Tina was eventually found dead in the field is more like reality than a movie. I think by telling the story of Tina Bigger, we sent a message to all the girls who are in this business, who want to be in this business, and to those who want to play around a bit in a world where they don't belong. The message is that you will get into trouble and end up in a situation that you don't control, and that could even end up killing you. Tina Bigger can no longer heed this advice because Ken Trent has become her rendezvous with the death.